So in here, we should have a brand new and pretty special release from Hamilton. Now, Hamilton are a pretty famous brand. They're part of the Swatch group these days, and I don't usually cover them on my channel. They tend to be a bit too expensive for me. However, I've had my eyes on this one from the moment it was announced, because this is somewhat of a highly anticipated release. You see, Hamilton's best-selling watch, or at least I assume is their best-selling watch, is this. This is the Khaki mechanical field watch. It's got that classic styling, really nice wafer-thin profile. And it's a watch community favourite, has been since I entered the hobby. And we've had many different versions of this watch, never one that was smaller. And the thing with this Hamilton is, even though it's only 38mm wide, it's got a pretty expansive lug-to-lug here. You'll see that the strap sits quite far down here in the lugs. But this watch does wear somewhat larger than you'd expect. It definitely doesn't feel like a standard 38mm. It's always been a bit too big for me. And while we've had larger versions of this watch before, I've always been hanging on and hoping for something towards the opposite end of the spectrum. And supposedly that's what we've got in here. So yeah, while everyone else has been fighting over the Swatch AP release, this is the one that I've been more interested in. So you'll find a link to this watch in the video description. You may have trouble grabbing one. I'll talk about why in a moment. But yeah, let's whip this open and see what they've come up with. So it looks like fairly standard Hamilton packaging here on the inside. Get this kind of wooden box. Not sure if it's real wood or just wood effect. I think the latter. And here she is. Yeah, really nice looking piece of kit, this. And I'm already noticing some minor differences. So here it is, the new Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical 36mm, listed on some sites as the Khaki Field 250. Now the reason for that is because Hamilton has released this supposedly to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the USA, of their winning of the War of Independence. A bit ironic then that possibly the first video on YouTube about this watch is from a Brit. But yeah, very attractive little watch this. Let's give it a wind up. Now, this particular watch is only available in this dark colour for now, in this black, so it's not an ideal candidate to compare against my 38mm. But you can see just here the substantial size difference between the two, especially when side by side. There really is a chasm of difference, especially with the dial width. Now, I'll get the exact measurements of it in a moment, but on a surface level, let's just see the slight differences aside from the colour on these versions. The logo is maybe the biggest change. You can see this new one has like that italicized version of the Hamilton logo. I'm assuming that is like the older version, which I do think looks better potentially, and more in general because everything's squished out a little bit closer together. While it is maybe a bit more crowded, I've always personally preferred the look of smaller watch dials full stop. So in some ways, kind of feel lucky I've got a small wrist to accommodate them. But yeah, other than that, mostly the same. Now, I'm not sure what the dark versions of the 38mm are like when it comes to the hands, but this new version here on the left does have white hands, but especially with that second hand there, the loom is kind of blocked onto the end. So there's no outline to that tip on the hand, which is quite interesting. And the other thing I've noticed is the crystal. That's also substantially different. While the previous version of the Hamilton here just had a fairly flat dome, really. Quite a subtle effect. This one on the left is substantially more raised, more of a bubble effect crystal. Kind of boxed glass there. Now, I'm not sure what material that is. How about I give you a close-up while I run you through the specifications on this one. So straight out of the gate, we got this stainless steel case with the same blasted finish as before, so a matte surface all the way over. That blasting has been done to a pretty high standard, albeit not the most complex finish. Still is quite thin too. Maybe not as stark as the other one. You can see here the bezel on this new one is slightly higher, even though it is using the same H50 movement. Now, some of that may be as a result of the water resistance, because this new one has fixed one of the bugbears people have had about this old version, because this only has a 5-bar water resistance rating, which always seemed a bit silly for a field watch, especially a more expensive field watch. You know, this isn't a Timex we're talking about here, whereas this new one, it carries across the screw back, but doubles up on that water resistance, so much more usable 10-bar rating. About time, I say. So as long as the crown is secured there, you can well and truly dip this in the water if you want to. Now the crown is just a push-pull crown, as is often the case with these manual wind watches. This one, you do get that nice 80-hour power reserve, but not the highest beat rate there on the hand. It's still much smoother than the quartz, obviously, but not as smooth as some of the high beat automatics you can find these days. Nevertheless, pretty good movement for the most part. And another major difference is the crystal. Now I did think as soon as I pulled this out of the box just then that it looked less hazy than the other one, even though the other one was white and this one was black. And that's because it isn't using a sapphire crystal. This is a piece of acrylic apparently. Yeah, definitely acrylic crystal there, which is period appropriate. They are basing this specifically off an older model. Yeah, the FAPD 5101 from the 1970s, supposedly. And I'm assuming that version had an acrylic crystal, and therefore this one does too. I know for some of you that's an immediate no-no. I'm not super fussed by that, but sapphire in this sort of shape certainly would have been nice, even if it would have cost them substantially more. This dome stuff you see on the previous version Hamilton, because it's a really gradual, smooth dome, is apparently much more affordable than if they were to try and replicate this really steep shape here. That's just what several watchmakers have told me. I'll certainly give this one a lume test at the end as well to see if that's any different. But another thing that's different is the strap here. Now, the strap on the standard Hamilton Khaki, at least the one that shipped with mine, was nothing short of atrocious, hence why I've lobbed it on a different strap here. But I did keep it here just for meme's sake. And yeah, I mean, this thing is absolutely disastrous. I would classify this as so bad, it's unusable personally. It just brings the whole look and vibe of the watch down. It's so cheap. No excuse for still using a strap like that these days. And admittedly, this one I've put on isn't a great deal better, but did help with wearability for my arm. And the one that comes on this new Hamilton, again, is far from special, I would say. It's not quite as bad as the other one, maybe. You might be able to use this. And perhaps the design here is quite specific. They're trying to really match up with that old model. It does have some unusual features here, like this kind of tab stitched into the end here with a squared off shape, and then these dark green leather keepers too. Quite an unusual look. Does match the watch fairly well, but again, I would generally expect a better strap than this on a watch costing this much money. For comparison, I've got the perfect watch actually right here to place against it. This is the Timex MK1 Mechanical. Love this watch. So as you can imagine, I also love the design of this Hamilton, but this one costs less than half of what the Hamilton does, and the strap is arguably better, I'd say. In some ways not as good in terms of no reinforced holes here. I can imagine these getting a little bit raggier, but this like ballistic style nylon is definitely going to look less raggy over time than this, I would imagine. Also has those nice steel extras if you're interested in that, but more on that one later. So yeah, strap definitely a frustration with this watch. Now looks wise, you get a look here that is inherently going to look like quite a lot of other designation style field watches. Those built to certain military specifications, they often end up looking very, very similar. And these days you can get plenty of watches with very similar dials to this from some Chinese manufacturers. Now this one does have certain advantages that they can't match, such as that movement. Super slim profile is also something I rarely see, especially for mechanical ones. This one has a really nice power reserve, and Hamilton just tends to do a nicer job of things like the hands and the cleanliness of the markers. They've always done a good job of tweaking fractionally and curating their watches, a little bit like Timex to a degree as well. But yeah, not the most unique look, even if Hamilton were one of these original military watch manufacturers. Yeah, let's get to those dimensions, because that's one of the crucial things with this watch. A lot of people were turned off the original Hamilton 38mm version because that really long lug to lug. Let's see how different this one is. So for comparison, the regular Khaki Mechanical 38, yeah, is almost exactly 38mm across. It's got that comparatively long 47mm lug to lug, which I guess just looks longer because it's quite thin. So with the crystal, only 9.5, and without it, it was a minuscule 7.9. That is impressive. I expect this new one's going to be quite different. So widthways comes in exactly 36.0, so their tooling is really on point. Lug to lug, I've just noticed something as well, actually. When turning the watch sideways, yeah, there's no drilled lugs on this one, as you can see. So that is a little bit of a shame. Gives a sleeker side profile, but also makes it a little bit trickier to remove those spring bars. Are they fixed in place? Oh, you know what? I think they are. That's really unusual. Was not expecting that. And Was that listed on the site? Well, you can see the lugs on the website here. It's not much of a close-up. And yeah, I think, yeah, those spring bars are non-removable, but we will test it in a second. Side quest paused for a moment. Lug to lug on this is 46.1, so it is slightly shorter, and I don't know whether it's the steepness of the lugs. It certainly looks smaller. Like quite a lot. It looks much more of a difference than 1mm, doesn't it? But yeah, only 1mm in it, surprisingly. Now with that crystal, if I take off that rear sticker there, with the crystal included, still only 10.4, so certainly not a thick watch, especially with such a tall dome. And without it, still only about 8.3, 8.4. So you could probably still get away with pass-through straps, no problem. And here's a look at it on my pretty small 6¼ wrist here. And while some of those measurements have only been tweaked from the previous one, this definitely fits me better by quite some margin, I'd say. There is effectively no overhang here, even though these lugs are quite tall. I think I can just about get away with that. In person, this looks shorter. Yeah, this is pretty much bob on for my wrist size. I do think, though, if you've got large wrists, this has got to be a no-go for sure. Probably best reserved if you want it to look proportional for those with the 7-inch wrist or less. And there's a look at the thickness with the strap. That's certainly not bad either. The one part that's probably most different is this angle here, as you can see. I think those lugs certainly feel a little bit steeper there, and it kind of curves down, hugs my wrist a fraction better than the other one, which is good. And while the quality of the strap is very questionable, the aesthetic isn't so much. I think it does match the watch pretty well. Looks very militaristic, almost like what a parachutist might wear, and comfortable enough. And wow, surprisingly, I'm on the last hole there as well, which seems odd. Like, why make a strap with holes that extend 2 inches longer than a wrist like mine? Like, surely someone with a wrist size this big is not going to be going for a watch this small, surely. Yeah, maybe the one-up is probably a slightly more comfortable fit for me, actually. But even so, it's just a bizarre set of choices with the strap. It does have a branded buckle. I always like the effect you get with these really domed crystals. The section right at the edge here kind of leaves you just this almost milky pool around the very edge. Always thought that looks quite cool, and it's a effect you just don't get with the standard domed stuff. But yeah, really do like this watch, and I should hope so, considering how much I paid for it. So this one was retailing for €675 on the Hamilton site, which works out at about £595, or if you're in the US, $725 USD. Although if you're in the US, it comes with an extra strap. Not sure if that's because with the conversion it costs more for you guys for some reason, really don't know. So yeah, far from a cheap watch, and that's the thing with Hamilton watches in recent years. If you saw my fairly recent video on Ben's Watch Club, certainly not as cheap as they once were, especially because their grey market availability is a little bit more limited these days. You could grab these all day for under 400 quid just a few years ago, whereas now all the versions of the Khaki Field are a fair chunk more than that. This one is a little bit more expensive than the standard 38mm Khaki Field, but with the water resistance improvement, I think that for some that might be worth it. But the biggest challenge is going to be availability on this one. Now, unlike the Swatch AP release, I didn't have to fight my way through a crowd to get this. I also didn't have to pay scalper prices. Now, some may consider the standard retail price a bit of a scalper price, but you know, those other watches were being immediately flipped for thousands. This one, I was actually able to just go and buy off the Hamilton site when I saw the notification come in. However, I go on the Hamilton site now, and it just says, available soon, notify me when available. So whether that means they have instantly sold out, I really don't know, because this was a limited edition piece, and that's one of the two caveats with this watch. Number one was the price, and number two was, can you even get the opportunity to spend that money? Because they've only made apparently 1,776 pieces worldwide, that aligning with the birth of the USA, of course. And for a brand as well known as Hamilton, that isn't all that many pieces. Perhaps because people were waiting just that long for a 36mm Hamilton to come around, they have been able to genuinely garner that much organic interest for this watch. I suppose there is certainly a chance. There's also a chance that these have been bought up by flippers. In fact, let's have a look on eBay, see if any have hit it already. And yeah, here there are a couple of listings from Japan here, where the watch is listed for like 800 quid. But that's it. All these others are just different models. So either the scalpers aren't really out for this particular watch, maybe they're too busy with the Swatch stuff, or they just haven't received their watch yet to photo and then flip. But thought it was interesting anyway. What may also be interesting is the luminescence luminescence on this watch, because the original Hamilton Khaki, never quite know how to say that word, it's one of these you just don't use in British English. But yeah, the original watch never had the best luminescence from what I remember. Now let's see if that is any different with this one. So far it does on the surface look like the same compound. I'm still trying to work out my setup in this room, just waiting for a few things to be delivered. One thing that has definitely changed is because that second-hand tip has been constructed entirely of lume from the looks of it, or coated fully. That is a bit more visible. And yeah, I'd say it's maybe like 5% brighter than the previous one, but really isn't much in it. Yeah, definitely not impressive luminescence. Let's just try it here against this Timex watch. Pretty frustrating if it couldn't beat this. Well, no, it's, yeah, definitely brighter than that, especially the bits on the markers. But even so, you would still expect at this sort of price much better luminescence than this, I'd say. Let's take a closer look at those spring bars. I'm very curious now. And you know what? We should probably take a look at the inscription on the rear. Might give us an idea of which one I've got. I said they were numbered, and maybe one of the codes on there is the number. Not sure whether it's this long one here or whether it's this little code at the top, but I can't really tell. I thought it would just be a number out of 1776, but no, it just has exactly what you'd expect instead on the back, commemorating the 250th anniversary, and it's Swiss made. And that's the kind of peculiar thing with this watch, because Hamilton, I mean, their watches haven't been made in the US for a very long time, decades at this point. The connection to the US is a little bit tenuous these days, I'd say. A little bit of a stretch to commemorate this, in my opinion, but there you go. Watch is still at least good looking. I think my wife will love the look at this. To me, yeah, that is definitely fixed lugs, that, which is very odd, because the original Hamilton, as you can see from the drilled lugs here, you can just, you know, pop and change the strap, which I think is really useful, especially if you want to reduce the thinness of the watch. And while, again, thinness isn't really a problem here, you could still get away with a pass-through strap. Seems a bit of a shame. Maybe that was because the original version of this watch also had fixed lugs. So yeah, I was just going through the packaging and noticed this little picture of the original watch, and indeed they do say here that it had fixed bars, so I'm guessing that's why they've done it. It does look a lot like the Bullover Hack, actually, the old one there. I think the new one is a little bit more attractive. They are a bit more durable, you see. We've seen these on watches like the Bertucci watches before, so it's not uncommon on a field watch. It still looks to have that similarly long kind of gap with the lugs too. Maybe that's what they were trying to avoid with this one. Just don't give people the option to put a standard strap on. Who knows? Lug width, by the way, if you did want to switch it, is 18mm. I wonder if I've got a strap line around here, and you'll have to let me know what you think of this strap. Yeah, that is basically the perfect match for this watch. Could have benefited actually from those fixed lugs being slightly lower down, because it's got a bit more of a prominent case back, as you can see, versus the other one, which had a flatter case back. There was less of an angle as you were going into the lugs, whereas this one, because it's got that slightly steeper angle, you just get a bit more shade on this front area, as you can see. But otherwise, I think the watch does look much better on a leather band like this, something higher quality. And with the single pass option, does make it wear that bit thinner as well, as you can see. Just quite a lot more flush, actually, when you look at it from this angle. Yeah, that's maybe the way to go with this watch. So yeah, personally, pretty split on this one, because I do like the watch. It's got those nice Hamilton characteristics with the dial. However, I think it's a bit frustrating how, you know, if you've got larger wrists, you've got two different sizes to choose from all year round, whereas unless you manage to grab one of these limited edition units, you can't get a 36mm Hamilton Khaki field. Does seem a shame that they weren't able to just, you know, release one that isn't limited edition. I know it's not the trend anymore, but to be able to have that choice would have been great, and I think people still would have gobbled it up initially. So yeah, I'll leave a link to it in the video description in case it does come back available at some point. I guess in the meantime, I'll also link a couple of other options. This Timex, for one, does have some scuffs. This one's also acrylic, but you do get much of the same experience, and you can get these readily available. Also, hand wound movement isn't nearly as good. But yeah, I'd love to know what you think in the comment section down below.